You might have heard about the 7 days of creation. You might have even chuckled when you heard that our Creator was able to put this all together in 7 slots of 24-hour days. Well, here's the thing about the days of creation. First of all, how does creation take place? What's our Creator's mechanism of choice when it comes to calm? I mean, if our ancestors saw that in the future the oceans are all gone, then what do you think that means? What's the obvious natural process that sees something surrounded by water, then have that water go away? They saw the oceans disappear because our oceans is how It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about what makes more sense. At the moment, some people think that random evolution makes sense. But what actually makes way more sense is predetermined growth. Humans don't exist because random things happen in sequence. We exist because we're all an inevitable part of our planet's growth process. It's as if we're all part of this planet's DNA. Now, that's quite the statement, isn't it? So, where's my proof? Because if we're part of a planet's DNA, then all planets should have this planetary DNA, which means all planets should have people and animals and vegetation. So, where did everyone else go? Why are all those spinning spheres all around us so empty? And I'm here today to make the case for those poor planets and stars that you claim are empty and lifeless. And I'm not here to say, oh, there's a speck of life, a microbe somewhere on a faraway planet where things also manage to randomly evolve. No. I'm here to say that all these seemingly empty spheres are actually bursting with lots and lots of life. And not just any life. We're talking people, animals, and vegetation. And lots of it. Because what you see is not necessarily what you get when it comes to outer space. But again, where's my proof? There are people, animals, and vegetation on all the planets and stars all around us. Why can't we see them? And how's that even possible on a fiery plasma-blasting star like our own sun? That's a serious barbecue for any organism. So how does this work? Well, here's the thing. Have you ever considered that maybe, just maybe, we're not seeing life out there because we have a problem and not because the life isn't there? As in, the life is there, but we're going through something that is affecting us in such a way that we can't see any life, even with the fanciest telescopes looking exactly where they should. It's just off limits. And if you let me, I'll convince you that that's exactly the case. That everything is alive all around us. That we are here not because we randomly evolved into existence, but because nature, who has been doing this for a very, very long time, has created us in such a way that is predetermined and follows all the same rules that govern the growth process of all spinning spheres we like to call planets and stars, including all the amazing things they're made with, specifically people, animals, and vegetation. To say a sphere doesn't have these things is like saying we only have our skeleton. Imagine you were born with built-in X-ray glasses, and all anyone can see is just other people's bones just walking on their own. That's similar to what we see when we look anywhere outside of our own atmosphere. It's as if nature strapped these huge X-ray glasses to our planet, and that dictates what we see as a result. But why in the world would we be seeing an X-ray of the universe? Why are we only exposed to the foundations of the other planets and stars around us without seeing the outer layers, where all the people, animals, and vegetation would naturally be? And to answer that, I want to ask you a simple question. What's more likely, us being random or us being isolated? Is it more likely that all the spinning spheres all around us are empty as we see them now? Or does it make more sense for all the other spinning spheres to be alive, like all of them, and for us to be locked away or isolated from that life? So much so that we can't see any of it. We can only see each other and nothing else. So which is it? Us being random or us being isolated? If we're isolated and not random, that means existence itself actually makes perfect sense. There would be no need for any random evolution. All planets and stars would be made in the same way. They would all go through a similar process, a process that starts with isolation, before they join the multitude of life that was always there all around them, but that they couldn't interact with or see because of the state of isolation nature put them in. Now, hold on just a second. This is starting to sound very, very familiar. Something being isolated when it's made as a necessary part of its growth process. Help me out here. Is there anything in nature that is isolated at its very earliest stages of existence to allow it to grow until it's ready to join everyone else? Okay, I think we're onto something here. I think the answer is everything. Everything that lives in our world is in isolation in its earliest stages until it reaches a point where it can join everything else. A tree is isolated in its seed, a bird is isolated in its egg, and we are isolated inside the womb. But can a whole planet be isolated before it joins all the other living planets? Well, let's see. Are there any other signs or symptoms that our planet might be undergoing the same familiar process of gestation? So we've established that it seems like we're all alone. Check. We're surrounded by darkness. Check. Oh, wait. No. I'm totally wrong here. I'm way off, folks. Really sorry. Everything is fine. Our planet can't be undergoing the process of gestation, because if that was the case, our planet would need to be dependent on life from an outside source. And our sphere clearly doesn't rely on a separate sphere for life, does it? Well, this next one won't be possible, will it? Is our planet wrapped in some kind of a salty fluid that supports life? All right, what more do you need other than our planet's actual circumstance? Listen carefully to what I'm about to say, because the situation our planet is in is so commonplace. It's so prevalent, so obvious that we see it every day all around us. We just never thought it could ever apply to something so big. Our planet is a fetus that's currently inside the womb, and we are the fetus's neural network. Let that sink in for a second. Our planet is a fetus that's inside the womb, and we are that fetus's neural network. But I can tell you're a little bit confused. If we're the brain cells of our planet, then what type of organism is it? We see a big spinning sphere, but we don't see any eyes, a nose, arms, legs. If the planet's inside a womb, then what is it? Well, knowing our planet is right now, at this moment, going through the process of gestation, gives us a very unique and very primal or initial view of what an organism undergoing gestation is actually exposed to, from the perspective of its neural network. We're seeing the beginning of life. Nature is kindly filling in the blanks of the one experience none of us can remember from our own lives. What goes on inside the uterus stays inside the uterus until now. I mean, we think we know what goes on inside the uterus because we have this outsider's perspective, but no one really knows what the fetus itself is experiencing from their perspective. But what we do know is exactly what the neural network of that fetus experiences, because we're living it. What your own brain cells saw and were exposed to when you were inside the womb, when you were just a tiny fetus, was a sphere. They saw you in the same way we see our planet. You were and still are a spinning sphere to your own neural network. When you look out into outer space, when you stare into the night sky, you might as well be looking at a mirror. Nature went through all this trouble to surround us with this endless field of planets and stars so that when we reach this point in our own development, we could finally realize that what we're seeing is life in its purest form. We're seeing the foundation. These spinning spheres are all alive. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at roots. We're looking at human and animal roots that belong to the scale above us. You didn't think there'd be so many of them and they would just pointlessly and aimlessly be spinning up there. Oh wait, no, you get to have a point. You get to be alive, but they don't? And you reach that conclusion, why? Oh, you decided you're alive and they're not. As the sphere you belong to is wrapped in embryonic fluid surrounded by darkness, seems like it's the only one and depending on a bigger sphere for life. You decided we're alive and they're not because you can't see anyone. The most obvious thing about gestation is that what you see is actually the exact opposite of what's there. You thought we weren't seeing any life, but we are. It's all alive. Might not be the life you were expecting because it's the life that you get on the inside, not the surface. which is technically even better than what we were expecting because it's the source of all life. What we're seeing is spinning roots on the inside of the Milky Way. If the Milky Way has spinning roots, then guess what else the Milky Way will have? A surface that's completely out of bounds for us visually because of the state our planet is in. Our planet gets to see the inside, while we get to see our surface. Our planet doesn't get to see the Milky Way surface, just like we don't get to see our planet's inside. It's one or the other, but never both. And the reason our planet doesn't get to see the surface yet is because the inside is where life begins. Every living organism in every scale is made of two parts. The part that lives on the surface and the part that's inside the ground, the body and its root. The same basic mechanism that we think only applies to vegetation applies to everything else as well. But unlike very basic organisms that have their roots and bodies connected to each other, our roots are slightly more sophisticated, and this allows us to move around freely on the surface. You're not as good looking as you think you are. You're actually a crusty, round, crater-filled type spherical organism that spins away and will keep spinning for a very, very long time deep inside this planet. And that's the reason we're surrounded with them in the first place, to understand that we look exactly the same. If you could open up our Earth, you would see a galaxy full of our own roots, which are obviously a lot smaller and spinning way faster than what we're used to seeing. You were built to last, while your body on the surface wasn't. Or maybe you don't believe nature is capable of making roots that are mobile. So you're going to sit there thinking that it's impossible for humans to have actual physical roots, while you yourself used to be a seed, which then combined with an egg and did what? Oh, it was planted in your mother's uterus. You're a seed that was planted, but there's just no chance you have a root, right? You sure about that? As long as our planet is inside the womb, we get to see the blueprint. The foundation of life itself is so important and so relevant to our own existence that nature has us surrounded with roots in every direction. I've got a question for you. Have you ever wondered what the inside of the womb would be like for a brain cell? No? You haven't? Well, this is it. This is what it feels like being part of a fetus's neural network. If you want to be even more specific, we are the cerebral cortex of this planet's brain. The so-called smart part. The part in charge of seeing, not just with our eyes, but seeing things with our ability to make deductions and reach conclusions about a reality in our existence, before those realities even make themselves known. We need to see before there's anything there to see. We need to envision what this world is before the full force of what nature has planned for us hits us. We need to make ourselves ready, because our planet is on track for birth. And guess what happens when a planet is born? We, all together, move from the world that we know now into a reality that's very, very different. I mean, all the symptoms are here. If right now our planet's relying on an outside source for life, that won't be the case after it's born. If right now our planet is surrounded by darkness, that won't be the case when our planet is born. We're talking perpetual pure light, not just any kind of light, a light of the kind we've never experienced before. If right now our planet is wrapped in a salty embryonic fluid, that won't be the case when our planet is born. When we say goodbye to all oceans forever. Now, I'm wondering, have our ancestors ever tried to describe a place like this at any point? Did they say that the world as it is now will change into something completely different? They did, didn't they? I mean, if our ancestors saw that in the future the oceans are all gone, then what do you think that means? What's the obvious natural process that sees something surrounded by water, then have that water go away? They saw the oceans disappear because our oceans is how the neural network of a fetus sees embryonic fluid. It's that simple. Add to that the fact that it's statistically impossible for us to be the only ones, and that we're getting our life from an outside source, and the answer is right there in front of you. Or, I feel bad saying this, but it was literally under our nose all along. But our ancestors couldn't explain it in today's terms. Science wasn't the prevailing method of explaining your reality back then. But I'm pretty sure they gave it a name. Heaven. paradise. Well, now that we all prefer to speak science, you could say that heaven is what happens when a planet is born. This was always our path and it never changed. And now we can finally rationalize what we've been through, as well as knowing what to expect moving forward. Not to mention understanding why we've been struggling as a collective from the moment we were made. Everything about us was made for an existence outside of our current situation, but instead, we're stuck in this dark bubble, not knowing that our surroundings have always had an expiry date attached to them all along. It was never about the why or the how, it's always been about the where. If we realize where we are, we extrapolate exactly who we are and why we are and what we are. If our planet's on its way towards birth, then we can prepare ourselves for what's coming. But maybe you still don't believe a planet can be born. Well, regardless of what you believe, you're currently part of a spinning sphere that's relying on a bigger spinning sphere for life. It's surrounded in darkness, it feels like it's the only one, and it's wrapped in a salty life-supporting fluid. Listen, you'll need to wake up to our current situation because with every second that passes, we get closer and closer to the birth of our planet. Or maybe it's the time scale that's putting you off. If time spent inside the womb is about 40 weeks or just over 9 months, then how is it possible that we've already been here as a collective for thousands of years? Well, the answer couldn't be more simple and straightforward. If the size scale changes, then the time scale changes too. The scale of our planets and stars is way bigger and way slower than what we experience. But you know what? For our planet, and more importantly for our sun, the whole thing will feel like plus or minus 9 months for them. 9 months for our planet is more like thousands of years for us. It might be hard to wrap your brain around at first, but the same chunk of time will be experienced differently relative to the scale you're in. So 9 months for you will feel like thousands of years for your own neural network. Here's a great example of this. You might have heard about the 7 days of creation. You might have even chuckled when you heard that our Creator was able to put this all together in 7 slots of 24-hour days. Well, here's the thing about the days of creation. First of all, how does creation take place? What's our Creator's mechanism of choice when it comes to complex organisms? It's the process of gestation, isn't it? Because our planet's relying on an outside source and wrapped in a salty fluid, that will mean that gestation is happening now. What you assumed incorrectly is that the 7 days of creation are over. But they're not. This is still day number 6. We've never seen day number 7 because it hasn't happened yet. We're told it will happen. As far as our Creator is concerned, it's so inevitable that it technically already has. But for us, we're at the end of a very long cycle, also known as day number 6. You see, the really nice thing about day number 7 is that all the people will be taking part in that day will know everything there is to know about their surroundings, about who they are, and most importantly, who it was that made them. Who it was that gave them this opportunity to show that they can work together in harmony with the people around them, to demonstrate that they can put the needs of others first, that they can be a positive influence, that they can move in a direction of growth and cooperation, because what else would nature want from you? When you really simplify it, the only thing that really matters in this life is the realization that kindness and compassion were the only real target we needed to reach. This was always the task at hand. Are you pushing our collective forward by being a good person, or are you holding it back? This was always the only thing that ever really mattered. Choosing goodness when all other options are there. Because being a good person shows our Creator that we understand. It shows you get it. As a member of this planet's brain, you can't afford to not understand the most basic requirement and then go against the very thing that gave you you. Imagine a brain cell that chooses not to think. A person that chooses to lie and cheat and abuse and tear down and step over all the other people that are also just trying to make sense of it all. Did you really think you could be a part of this reality and just do whatever you want without any consequence? I mean, you can technically act any way you like, Every day we can choose to act in so many different ways, but it's only those people who make a conscious decision to align with what it was that gave them this awesome opportunity to actually be alive, despite all the odds stacked against them, despite all the other people around them saying that, nah, it's not that important. Only the kind and compassionate will be allowed to move into the seventh day of creation, and they will live a life of understanding and bliss as they wait and prepare for the seventh day to finally be over, and for the most miraculous thing in all existence to finally happen. Do you know what happens when the seventh day is over? When our planet is finally born? That's the point. We finally get to meet our Creator for the very first time as a collective and in person. Our Maker will be here with us, next to us. This is the birth of a planet, moving from darkness and into an eternal perpetual light, with each other and the one that made us.